Imagine opening your email to find years of history deleted. Only a single email remains. A ransomware request for $2 million. You think to yourself, how could this happen to me? You see, there's two types of companies. Those that have been hacked and those that will be hacked. The weight of responsibility comes crashing down on you. It's the sort of responsibility you feel when your family is craving a delicious pizza. You finally open the box only to find the most cringeworthy topping that you mistakenly ordered. Join Pineapple on Pizza podcast as John and George, along with guest executives, discuss the most common and craziest cybersecurity risks, followed by actionable tips and strategies that can be implemented to protect your cyber risk pie. Pineapple on Pizza is hosted by Omnistruck.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Pineapple on Pizza. Today, we've got this great guest, and we've been having fun with him on beforehand here. But he's a husband and father of two, grower of early stage startups. He lives life in the fast lane, enjoying anything with a motor and maybe even just falling down a hill fast. I mean, it sounds like. Founder of QuSecure and current COO of Reliant Management. Welcome to Kosta Vilk.
Thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure. And it's always a pleasure to connect with you, John, and you, George.
Well, so you're here. Yeah. And so you know why we're here. So if cyber risk was a pizza and the frameworks are a crust, what's the riskiest topping you've seen and what topping would you equate that to?
All right. So I'll give you an unusual one. I think that the riskiest topping is actually the pizza sauce, right? The marinara or the red sauce. And the reason is if it's missing, you know about it. If it's bad, you know about it. But if it's good, it's just part of the price, right? It's what you eat. You don't even notice that it's there. No one ever says it's the best. I go there for the pizza sauce, and because of that, what I do, and the reason I think it's the riskiest one, is because to me it actually speaks to cryptography and encryption and how we protect everything, because that's where the real cost to us is. We protect everything with encryption, right? This very connection that we're speaking on is encrypted. And if it's not there for anything from small transaction to a large transaction, right? When you go to do your banking, you want that to be well protected. So that to me speaks of risk.
And I would say that very few people actually understand like SSL certificates and certificate management. And you think, oh, I just get a certificate and it's super easy. But with the signing requests and the other pieces, there are very few people that actually understand how that cryptography, how that works, and can actually manage it. So definitely, but is required for everything that we do today, whether it's encrypting drives or data at rest or data in transit. It is extremely important, and so we definitely need more people to understand the cryptography.
Yeah, it is. And surprisingly, what I've noticed is that even most of the cybersecurity professionals don't really understand it very well. So my joke about it is that we kind of treat it like a redheaded stepchild, right? It's there, we don't know it, we don't understand them very well. We know that it's important, right? It's an important part of the family, but sometimes we don't give it the attention that it really deserves. And what makes it really interesting is that in the new generation of the evolution of our industry, this is actually an existential part of what we need to do and how we need to look after it. So that's kind of why we founded QuSecure, to look at what quantum resilience is and how do we address the next evolution in computing to keep us protected and safe and all of these things. I mean, cryptography is let's call it a 40-year-old tech, give or take 20 years in either direction. and that's what we use daily right now.
So, I mean, you're leading into our next question, which is, what seems to be the problem? I mean, you talked about some quantum computing there, and my understanding is that with quantum computers, some of the encryption that we're using today can be broken fairly quickly. So what other things do you see that are what keeps you up at night? What are problems that you're seeing in the industry?
Well, I try not to stay up at night. I need my beauty rest. It hasn't worked so far, but I try. But all of those jokes aside, I mean, I really do see encryption and cryptography as the new frontier, right? Because we're getting good at managing identity, at managing access, at the tools are there, the practices are there. We understand monitoring, we understand threat hunting, and so many other techniques. With zero trust, we've got so much that's being built out, even if it's not articulated well in the industry. They always try to claim zero trust when it isn't. But cryptography really is one of those things that we take for granted, and we put a lot of belief and trust in it, even though we see so many failed implementations, lack of understanding how to implement the algorithms, how to implement them effectively. As a matter of fact, about a week ago, I read a piece that came out of one of the largest internet threat protection companies out there, and especially as it relates to post-quantum and quantum resilience. And what they wrote about it is, well, go ahead and replace the algorithms with the new ones that NIST approved, that got standardized, and away you go. And to me, it is just such a short-sighted view of things, because we have an opportunity to actually evolve the practices and evolve what we do, because we really don't understand cryptography well. From the standpoint of, a second ago I spoke about controls, right? We monitor behavior, we monitor identity, we monitor so many things, and we act against things that we perceive as a threat, or we recognize as a threat. We don't do the same with cryptography. In other words, let's bring it back to this very connection that we're on right now. It's SSL encrypted. We're running over TLS with it, usually, and as part of that, we're assuming that this connection is safe and secure. We don't know if there is a man-in-the-middle attack, if there is a replay attack to get into our session, or anything around side channel, or so many other vectors that could be affecting this very communication that we're on right now, because there is no real way for us to monitor it. We try to put in trust-based controls like single packet authentication, single packet authorization, SPA, or mutual TLS to create a trust relationship. But an attacker sitting in the middle is still able to pick up all of these things. Now, we spoke about quantum computing and what it is before, and the reality is, you're right. We at QSecure tested it against against RSA and ECC algorithms, and we figured out the steps that it takes to break classical cryptography, what we use right now, as a single process. So that what that means is, with enough compute power, which is going to come up very quickly, we actually can't rely on either the handshake or the encryption algorithms anymore. But replacing them alone is not necessarily the right thing to do, because of performance impacts, as in, we still want our connection to be fast, we still want to speak naturally, and of course the resilience and security that we still need to have. So when they apply a quantum computer against that encryption, we still want it to be safe.
And so what do you see that? I mean, as the classic cryptography is changing and being able to be broken, you said that we have an opportunity to change that. Tell me a little more about what that might look like.
Yeah, gladly. So right now, we can't monitor for advanced threats and persistent threats like even simple man-in-the-middle or replay attacks are not something that we can actually see, right? Because that connection can record the data stream, send it on, or replace it with their own credentials, or do so many other things as an attacker. So by bringing in management and monitoring controls and controlling how that actually plays out, we have an opportunity to actually evolve beyond where we are right now. And that's just on the communication side of things. We have the ability to bring in cryptographic agility, which breaks out into active and passive cryptographic agility. Now, a passive cryptographic agility means you update your libraries and your software and with new quantum resilient ones, but you also build in the controls to be able to switch out the algorithms as they prove to be vulnerable. In other words, you're setting yourself up for an success over time, right? Because we can't assume that something will not be broken tomorrow, even though it's resilient today. So, but we also know that there will be answers that come up that are able to replace what fails tomorrow with what should be resilient tomorrow as well. And that's what I would describe as passive cryptographic agility, because it doesn't respond, it doesn't react. Now, if we look at my earlier example of what happens when we start monitoring, well, it gives us also the ability to start responding. And that's where active cryptographic agility comes in. In other words, we can turn the tables on the attacker by noticing when they're trying to execute an attack or record it or breach a system, even in transit. We can automatically respond by actively changing the algorithms or changing the cryptographic strength or changing the key generation or so many other aspects of it. And that is an opportunity that I haven't seen anyone in the industry capitalize on yet. And this is something that we've actually been working on at QSecure for quite a while, and successfully, mind you.
So go ahead and tell us more about that. What is QSecure, and how are you making it better?
Sure. So we started off at the time when, about 4 years ago, when we noticed that the entire paradigm of how we encrypt data started shifting. I came out of financial services as a CISO or a CIO, and what became obvious is that we had the controls, but we were starting to lack the protections that the controls were really able to leverage able to leverage effectively, I should say. And that gap is something that made me very uncomfortable. And it was the reason why we started looking at what happens to the next evolution as more advanced systems come online, like quantum computing. We're also seeing a lot of the attacks by automated means like machine learning, AI-based ones. So we used AI and machine learning in our protections and controls and a lot of the software that we used for protecting it. But we never really looked at, well, what happens when the compute power exceeds our ability to protect data using encryption. So that became something that we decided to tackle. But beyond just looking at the encryption itself, how do we implement new algorithms? We started looking at, well, if we have this opportunity, how do we get to the next stage? Because what we're continuing to do is leverage 40-year-old practices, right? That's when SSL came out. That's where, it came out in the late 80s with the handshake protocols, the IPsec protocols that came afterwards, the AES algorithms and hashes and so many other things. Mm-hmm. So it really gave us an opportunity to say, well, why don't we start monitoring why don't we start responding to what we see? Because it just wasn't being done, and doing the same thing and expecting a different result, not the best of ideas, right?
Most definitely. So, I mean, looking at cryptography and some of the changes that have happened there, where do you expect the future to go with that? I mean, you mentioned some of those items, but I mean, what do you see as the future? I mean, obviously, quantum computing and being able to change those. Tell me a little more about that.
Absolutely. I mean, NIST has been working on new standards for quite a while. I think they first recognized the need back in 2015. They opened up a search. Within a couple of years after that, we've just completed the fourth round. Some of the algorithms have already been standardized on, and they're continuing to look for more. But of course, real life implementations, the devil's always in the detail, right? In other words, can you implement it well? But more importantly, what will it do for your SLAs? In other words, bigger key encapsulation methods that replace our asynchronous cryptography, right? What we use for data in transit, handshakes, and things like that. That's being worked on heavily. So, and it's being standardized, which is going to be a great benefit. But because of their size, they could be actually quite impactful to those very same SLAs, because we want our tech to be equal to or better than what we're using right now. We don't want to take a step back and say, okay, now my Zoom session is going to be jittery, right? And it's going to have interruptions. But what happens when we're trying to synchronize large volumes of data for large enterprises, when we're moving terabytes, petabytes around every single 24-hour session, right? So that became that's something that's existentially impactful, and we don't want to rock that boat. So again, the devil's in the details. How do we implement it? How do we optimize it? What do we do moving forward? But then how do we also bring in those controls around passive cryptographic agility for the applications that you build, active cryptographic agility for the data as it's being used? How do you do that with adequate monitoring and adequate responses? So all of these things, that's our industry-wide opportunity. That's what we need to work on right now.
Well, and you brought up the NIST. I mean, we utilize the NIST CSF in a lot of the things that we do, but we also do 853 and 800-171. So, and help customers implement those. So, although you're talking about the control specifically around cryptography, there's all the other controls that can help a business understand better how to manage their entire organization rather than just IT or just cryptography. So, but it can get very, very detailed very quickly. I once had a customer that timed. He called me up and said, "It's taking 30 seconds for me to send an email, or I send an email over here and I don't get it for 30 seconds." And I said to him, "Do you have any idea what happens as far as encryption and sending and TLS and spam checking and this and that?" And he was just not impressed. He wanted it to be a 1 second item no matter what. So I think that some of those expectations sometimes are pretty high for the technology, and that's okay to have high expectations, but I think we got to be a little bit realistic when it comes to some of these items.
Absolutely. And what happens when that login takes 30 seconds, right? We'll have a lot of very frustrated people.
So, Kosta, so tell me, what events do you go to learn more about the cryptography, to learn more about the security pieces?
Sure. So typically I look for larger events where I see speakers that I trust and respect. So that's your RSAs, your Black Hat conferences, your risk conferences by Osaka. Of course, because I'm in the quantum space, I live IQT quite a lot, and I've got some content up there also. A lot of it comes down to education, and a lot of it also comes down to us creating that content as well. So, for example, right now I'm working on a book with a large publishing house to really help convey the knowledge and our findings and the practices we've developed, both historically when I was still in financial services and over the last 3-4 years at QSecure, to really understand what this next evolution really means to us and how does it work with all of the AI systems that are coming online. So we basically look everywhere and read up a lot of publications, a lot of research, and double check everything, because we've seen a lot of science journals come out with certain publications, and then when you actually go and test them yourself and you peer review them, you realize that some of this stuff is actually full of crap.
Well, so you mentioned that you're writing a book. Are there any other books that you might recommend? I mean, maybe by the time this comes out, your book might be done, and we could put a link in the information here. But I mean, are there any books you'd recommend?
There are, and sadly enough, I don't remember them off the top of my head right now. So, do you mind if we come back to this while I frantically search my library for exactly the books that are my favorites?
You know what? If you want to just send us an email, we'll just include it as a link. Or when this comes out, you can put a library link down at the bottom of the podcast. How's that?
That'll be terrific. And what I'll say about it is most of them actually have to do with leadership rather than technology, because approaching a problem with the right mindset is what I've noticed to be the biggest challenge for most people, because we get enamored with our ideas. We know what we know, but it's really hard for us to actually take a step back and step out of that perspective. And actually think about, what's the greater relationship here and what does it mean? So because of that, I actually look more for leadership type of books that open your mindset more so than technical ones.
I mean, honestly, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with that one, because I mean, we find many times that it's not a technology solution or not a technology problem anymore. I mean, there is some technology problems, but I mean, we have so much technology now that's available to people, and expertise and configurations. But a lot of it does come down to that CEO that says, I'm not doing the 2-factor authentication. I'm not doing this. And, then gets hacked and wonders why. Why didn't you protect me? And it comes down to leadership, and it comes down to not wanting that extra complexity in their life. So it definitely is a leadership thing and just a life thing. I mean, too many, even in your personal life, sometimes you can be distracted, and that's when we find that we catch a lot of people with the phishing attacks or different things like that as well. So it definitely comes down to the person and what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a reason why all of these memes have been created to make fun of what we do as professionals.
Yeah, I agree with the cult. What's the old adage or the cliche? Culture trumps strategy 100% of the time. And that's about leadership and the right mindset. Once upon a time, I worked for a home improvement center that had a lot of racks that were orange. And they used to say "bleed orange," and so the culture and the leadership of that home improvement center was fanatical. It was amazing. The cybersecurity problem we had was a physical security issue. They called it shrinkage, and then they became loss prevention, and it's got asset protection, what they call it these days. But the culture of that organization is if somebody was potentially shoplifting, right, there was a code that they put out, and everybody would love to hear that code because everyone wanted to work together and stop the shoplifter, so to speak. But the culture of the organization made everyone feel like an owner at the time anyway. So, and that's about leadership. It really is, whether it's a cyber world, an internet deliverable, or a cybersecurity issue, or a physical world issue. It's one and the same in terms of the mindset has to be right, or you're not going to get very far.
Exactly. And what's funny, to add to what you were saying, is all of these things play a huge role, but your customers can also feel it when all of your company functions together, when they can feel when the people that make up that team really believe in the company, and that's driven by the culture, that's driven by the leadership, like you two gentlemen provide for your company.
We try. But Kosta, how did you get to where you're at? I mean, I know you're in California, and at least currently, and so how does, if I'm a 15-year-old kid, how do I get to be a Kosta in my future?
By making lots and lots of mistakes proudly. I think that would be the right go. And I've never really thought about following a standard model, as in go work for someone, build things, collect your paycheck, go home at 5, spend some time, and move on. I try to actually create the time for the things that I want to do, and it gives me the space to also focus on what I see as opportunities that need to be addressed, because I can't find the right ways to address them that make enough sense. And it spills over into everything that I've been doing. That was the reason why I founded iSpan. Same reason as why I founded QuSecure. Same reason as why I just started LinkTempo with a few of my friends and colleagues, and actually some of the people from QuSecure as well, including some of my fellow founders, are helping out with it. So it's just when an opportunity presents itself, it's a bit of a disservice to yourself, the opportunity, and the greater community in general not to address it. You'll make mistakes, but just learn from them and apply those learnings next time, and assume that hard things are just the way of doing things.
And so that's what advice would you give your younger self? I mean, it sounds like you kind of covered a little bit of it there, but is there anything else that you'd specifically tell yourself at yourself at 15? Hey, you should be doing more of this and less of this.
So one of them would be to actually diversify and invest in some stocks. That doesn't hurt, and start building a nest egg nice and early. Some of it is be thoughtful about what your plans are. So I've managed to make decisions in a way that I don't really regret them, but being thoughtful about how you make those decisions, what you get involved in, how to study it, and how to make decisions themselves is really important. So think about what's your decision-making process. How do you tell right from wrong, and how do you not get stuck in analysis paralysis stages of things, and how to apply them both from the practical standpoint, but also from the growth and growth standpoint as well, right? One takes imagination and one takes practicality, but how do you merge them together? It's the same as being able to translate between technical talk and business talk, right? It's very different skill sets, but finding a way to understand both of those skill sets, I think, has been quite helpful.
Excellent. And your point is well taken on that. I wish you would have told me that when I was 15.
I wish I would told that to myself when I was 15.
So, Kosta, where can people find you?
So I'm on LinkedIn. By the way, on LinkedIn, I use my full name, which is Konstantin. It's spelled Konstantin, no E at the end. Konsta Vilk, and so I'm there. The LinkTempo website is launching soon. That one is my new passion project, because we're taking a lot of the learnings from the cryptographic side of things and data protection and data management, but we're actually applying them to business cases. So we're taking a step above the next logical step from the core tech that we created at QSecure, which is QuSecure. .com, and then applying them to, how does the business function and grow? And to do that, we're creating relationships with data that tend to cause problems for everyone that has ever had to integrate a piece of data into what they want to do on the business side of things. So that's the next big challenge that we're tackling, and it's frankly very, very exciting. That company is called linktempo.com. And of course, at Reliant Management, that's how we make things happen, right? Reliant Management is, by the way, I've taken a step back from my active role at QSecure to focus on Reliant and Linktempo. So now I'm only serving as an advisor to QSecure. And but the ecosystem is there and the relationships are there. And again, it's very, very exciting.
Well, I mean, that kind of takes us into the next question, which is what are your passions? What do you do outside of work? I mean, you've mentioned a couple of passions, but now tell us more about what you like to do outside.
Absolutely. So in a little bit, I'm going to take my family. We're going to go traveling. We're very much looking forward to it. My wife has been working extraordinarily hard. She's a very senior exec, actually probably more accomplished than I am. Definitely spotted between the two of us. So we're going to take a little break, see a little bit of sunshine, spend some time with our 18 and 11-year-old. The 18-year-old is off to college, and we want to make some memories. So we'll hit Spain, some other places in Europe as well. That's exciting. And other than that, spending time on the beach, on the boat. That'll be nice. That's something I'm looking forward to. And if it's got wheels on it, I want to drive them off.
Sounds like fun. I definitely enjoy that myself. I've traveled back and forth across the country and some other long travels as well. So definitely part of my passion.
Yeah. Someone recently, a very brilliant person recently suggested we try bobsledding. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
I'll be on your team. Let's put it that way. I'm just not sure who the anchor is going to be out of the three of us.
We'll see we'll see who is the most gravitationally challenged, because you want to wait up front.
These days, I think there's supposed to be 4 to one of these login slots, but those are like skinny 20-year-olds. So I think we're going to stick with maybe the 3 of us. We decide to do so. That's right. The 3 of us will make up 4 of them,
and see if we come in with a new record time. All right, Kosta. Well, I appreciate your time on this, and definitely been very educational as far as the cryptography and quantum computing. I mean, there's so much more to learn, and looking forward to the NIST controls that are going to help us with that, as well as the NIST controls that help govern businesses and the changes that happen there. I think that there's some exciting things that are coming, and regulations and other things that will help push this for many companies. Definitely, thank you very much, Kosta. We appreciate it. To our audience, thank you. Thank you for listening. If you've learned something today or laughed, please tell someone about this podcast. Pass it on. Link them in. Put it on LinkedIn. There's always some great things that we find in this. And so, again, Kosta, thank you. We appreciate it. And that's it. Today has been another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza with your hosts, John and George. We hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, everybody. Everyone. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all for joining another great episode of Pineapple on Pizza. You can find show notes, links, and resources by visiting omnistruct.com/blog. And a huge thank you to all who are preventatively protecting organizations from cyber threats.